My name is Angela Higginson. I'm from Paducah, Kentucky, and now currently residing in Louisville. November, it was November the 30th. My head was just throbbing. I thought it was just a normal headache, but it was something different. My body was telling me that it was different. So I got everybody situated and turned back around off of Bardstown Road to head back downtown towards U of L Hospital. I happened to see Norton's Immediate Care, stopped and went inside. To simply ask, do they write a prescription for headache medicine? The nurse at the desk asked me to sit down immediately and took my blood pressure. It was 209 over 110. Um, so I sat there for a moment and she was talking to me. I responded to her questions, and at some point I could not respond. So I got my phone out and immediately text my son. My voice came back, my phone started ringing, and I told him I was at the doctor's office and it looked like I was having a stroke. Um, and he said, "Hold on." He put me on hold and she said, "You're going to have to hang up." I again was not able to speak. And then all I remember is the ambulance coming in. They gave me a shot. Um, she asked me, "How did I get here?" I took a piece of paper and wrote, "I drove myself." And she said, "No way." But in fact, I did. So went into the ambulance to Baptist East, and I was there for throughout the weekend. Saturday morning, um, I kind of made a compromise, like, let me go home. And so I saw neurology, things like that. But indeed, I'd had a mini stroke and not known what was going on. But I knew something was different with that headache. So the kids were all safe. The vehicle was safe. But it was indeed an experience. But I knew it wasn't a normal headache. Not sure what led up to it. As I went to the doctor for follow up and results, they asked me about stress on my job and things like that. And being new to the area, I have a little familial stress from home and different things. Some of my family relationships aren't the best. So it may have been a little bit of that as well as a new job. But he said that there was a small indention in the back of my skull and wanted clarification on that. I kind of paused because it was a trigger for me, not knowing then that it'll ever come back up. So, amongst the stress, a history of seizures, they kind of determined it was neurology, something neurology. And so, what led up to it basically stress, history of seizures, and previous issues. I thought I met my hero. So this isn't my first rodeo to Louisville. And so as I transitioned to Louisville and making my home here, um, things kind of happened. The man that I prayed to God for, that I said this was it wasn't it. I became a victim of domestic violence. Um, a few months before we were to be married, it was, let me show you who really controls this house. I've always been outspoken, managed that team of 10, and we had 135 foster parents. So not only was I vocal in these trainings and these meetings, I was all over the state doing things with my boss and was a domestic violence victim. So we kind of, after a series of events in March, April, and May, I found myself thinking, now, Angela, come on. You can't supervise a team of 10 when you can't take care of the one. And I thought about the four eyes that look back at me daily. Like, I cannot bring my children into a situation like that. May 28th was a different day that I'd never forget. But I think more so, just looking back and reflecting, it was April of that year that I finally came to the conclusion I wasn't getting married, that wedding at the God House wasn't going to happen. And while he was at work, I had the locks changed and put the house up for sale through the leasing agency, because I knew for my sons, it was not the environment that they were going to be raised in. My ex-husband, he kind of said, I knew there was something about him I didn't like. So I inquired with him about, who do I need to call about this, that, and that the boys wouldn't be up there as much, up here in Louisville as much. So May the 28th, came up here to kind of finalize it all, and to say, well, in fact, I'm not marrying you, and you have 10 days to leave. Um, so it didn't work out as planned. Um, there was an altercation. My kids were down the street playing with friends from Mayfield, and it was all that I remember was, you need to be knocked down a peg or two. And from that situation, what I remember is after going to get means to protect myself, um, my head was hit on a table, a glass table, and I didn't remember much after that. Um, so the nosy neighbor next door happened to hear it, and I woke up to the police over me, asking me questions, asking me my name, different things. I was able to give my name, gather my thoughts, but I, in fact, had a seizure. And in one of the route changes to go to the store to get food, um, one of my mentors, she saw me and she said, well, what are you doing out this late at night? Because I would go late at night because I still had the bruises and different things. And she happened to see them. And I had a breakdown at Banks Market in Lone Oak. So she kind of took me with her. And she said, you're not going back. And I said, oh, no, I'm at my apartment. I have an apartment, but my ex-husband were working on a couple of things. Um, and so for 3 days, I just sat there in the apartment alone just to reflect. I was mad at God. I did all the right things. He was single. I was single. He was a provider, all those things. But I thought a mentor, but I would have been dead had we married. Good, I promise. Yeah, I'm good. I promise. I'm good. For me to feel safe again, I think it was just making the right connections. So I would say probably a total of 5 years, really, to really be healed and um, go through therapy, um, talk to mentors. There was two that I specifically spoke with, um, that saw the bruises, that saw my back, that saw my face. Um, and even coming home, I mean, I had a 12 and a 14-year-old. I had enough makeup on my face that they didn't realize on the side. They just knew they were at their dad's for 4 days. You know, um, so I think in between, it was probably about the end of 2011 that I felt I was getting back to Angie, that fun loving, spunky girl. And so a friend that I grew up with, um, during that relationship, I had to call him to pick me up because that gentleman had took my vehicle. And so I had no way to leave Memphis. And so it's so funny. Um, I just had to kind of, gather my thoughts. And, as embarrassed as I was like, hey, I need a ride to go get my vehicle. So I had a tracker and I went and picked up my vehicle at like 3 in the morning. Um, and so, and that was the time where he called and was like, I'm close by. Let's try to talk about this, talk about things. And so we met at a neutral place, but I still kind of fell for, well, let me just go to the store. He never come back. So, so between 2011, 2012, I really had to think about what direction I was going to take with my life, with everything, with my children. Um, and so my ex-husband and I, we talked, and he moved out of our house and moved into another place, so the kids would have their home back. Um, and so I got connected with the church in Mayfield, and while still talking to my folks in Paducah, but I was embarrassed because I left to get married. I came back with no husband. I felt like failure number two. So I would say when I came to a place where I was able to go back to church, be involved, and able to talk about it, my boss, Lori Dowdy, asked me to do something for her church. And her husband was a pastor. And I said, I really don't know if I want to do that. So we talked about it. We did a small scenario of it, and I let it go at that. One of my mentors saw me that evening, and again, I had a meltdown. Um, and she said, if you're not ready, you need to say you're not ready. She said, I'm going to suggest you do more intense therapy. Um, and I said, no, I feel safe. I said, I think it was just, I was ready, but it was strangers. I'll never see them again. So it didn't matter. I said, because I didn't impact anybody's life to me. But in fact, my boss, she was like, we need to really talk. She said, you share some things, and out of that, these people have said, I was in a relationship like that. And so then I began to get to the phase of why me, God, to the, okay, you set me apart for this. I didn't like it, but it was, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That seemed to pop out. And then the Psalms 119 and 71, though I'm afflicted, those things, I'm able to carry those wounds because I put trust in you. And I'm summarizing that verse, but just Psalms 119 and 71, and just putting my trust in him, and that I had really had to understand what him being the refuge was. So pouring myself into church, and then being serious about that walk. I think with identifying that it was a domestic violence relationship, indeed I was shameful. I was embarrassed because I was a supervisor. Met with supervisors weekly, made decisions for, you know, 113 families who had our kids in care that were abused physically, sexually, emotionally. And there I was, enduring a lot of it in the height of my career, where I felt like, I'm a 10 today, but drive to Louisville and become a 1, because of emotional or talk, or, well, you can't do this right or you can't do that right. So I had to really gather myself together. Like, you have to face these things, and, remove the wall, because I began to build up a wall. I wasn't bitter. I was just mad as hell. Um, God, why did you put me here? Why did you do this? Um, so I really had to think about, how we could change it, be more welcoming to employees, um, be more vulnerable. And for me, that was very difficult. Um, so, yes, I was shameful. That as more people knew, as more people found out, they were like, how did you endure that and nobody knew? So I put on that strong face, that mask. I became more stoic, more unapproachable. Um, and I just wouldn't date. It just wasn't for me because I did everything right, but still. But it was probably 2017 where I finally had to say I was a victim of domestic violence. If I could just go back and say, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew that strength. Um, wow, I saw him. He was attractive. I thought, he's my hero. You see muscles and and all these things. And it was just like using my eyes to understand the part of being equally yoked, and just understanding what that means. Um, and I thought I understood it, but I didn't. Anybody can pray, anybody can reference God, but the signs were there. So just being more open to the signs and not using the cliche that we sometimes have. God, if the light changes, I'm supposed to be with this man. He didn't mean to do it. All the excuses that several, victims use, I use them. Um, and I gave him too much time. And after the first time, I knew better. Um, but when he was sober, that was May the 28th. There was no alcohol, there was no cocaine. He was sober. And it was liquor poured over me, a stomping on the ground, hit with a closed fist. Um, I think the biggest takeaway is you have to have self love. While you can mask um, a lot of things in life, um, you know, it's very hard to be a woman. And then they say, we're a strong black woman. What does that really mean? Because I wanted to be greeted at the door with my bags and, hey, baby, come in the house. You don't have to worry about supper and things. And I had that. Um, the biggest takeaway is if you find out you're unequally yoked, that you need to have that discernment to leave when the signs are there. God is going to give them to you. Then the way of escape that's provided, take it. Don't make excuses and to go back to say, well, let's band-aid it for this moment because he was drunk um, or he didn't mean it or he really did apologize. It's just because he loves me. And then more importantly, just to, you know, own your mistakes, the things that um, the things that you've taken for granted. Um, Talk to somebody. Don't keep it bottled up inside. Um, so that Angela now is a little bit more confident. I set boundaries a lot closer. When I recognize a trigger, I I give you 5 minute conversation and hey dude, I'm out. I love Angela, and I've always loved Angela. I just needed to love her more then, and I had to love myself more than I loved him. They always say, "What a little nugget." A little nugget to share is just, be true to yourself, be true to what occurred and what happened, and never be ashamed of the things, your past, because everyone has a past. Um, a learning tool, a learning point is like, the tree that's planted by the waters. You will bloom. You will bloom where you are planted. And if God has planted you in that specific place, you will grow. You will meet the right connections and the right people. Um, he's giving you the tools inside you to make the proper moves. Sometimes we need a push. Sometimes we need a nudge. But I think more so, I finally was able to get past the obedience is better than sacrifice thing and just be obedient, and just listen to God the first time around.